Most police body cam footage is released within days. Some footage takes weeks, and some footage is never released. Not because it's classified, not because it involves politics, but because everyone who watched it agreed on one thing. This was not meant to be seen. This is the story of Officer Jacob Miller and the body cam footage that officially does not exist. Jacob Miller was not the kind of cop who made enemies. 32 years old, married, no complaints on record. He worked the night shift in a quiet Montana town where nothing ever happened, which is why, when dispatch received his call at 2:14 a.m., everyone remembered it. Not because he sounded scared, but because he sounded confused. The call began normally. Jacob reported a disturbance near Pine Ridge Road. No weapons, no suspects. Then his voice changed. "Dispatch, I think there's someone out here with me." The dispatcher asked for clarification. Jacob paused, long enough for the radio to crackle. "I can hear him talking, but I don't see anyone." Silence. Then Jacob said something that was never written in the report. "He knows my name." The body cam activates automatically when Jacob steps out of the car. The footage shows a dirt road, trees on both sides, darkness swallowing the headlights. Jacob's breathing is calm, professional. Then a voice speaks. Not loud, not aggressive, just close. "You're not supposed to be here this early, Jacob." The camera turns. Nothing is there. For 6 minutes, Jacob speaks to someone who never appears on camera. He answers questions. He nods. At one point he laughs, which is when the dispatcher tries to interrupt. Jacob responds without touching the radio. He says you won't hear him. "Only me." The voice on the footage grows clearer, older. "Tired. I wore that uniform once too." At 2:29 a.m. dispatch hears it, not words. Breathing. Not Jacob's. Slow. Measured. Like someone standing very close to the microphone. Jacob stops moving. "He's behind me now." Dispatch orders backup. Jacob doesn't respond. Instead, he whispers. He says, "If I turn around, it'll be faster." The camera records one final thing. Jacob lowers his weapon. Not in surrender, but in respect. "Am I allowed to leave?" The unseen voice replies, "You already did." The footage cuts to black. The body cam continues recording. For another 18 minutes. No movement. No sound. Except wind. Backup arrives. Jacob's car is found. Door open. Engine running. Body cam on the ground. Jacob Miller is never found. No blood. No signs of struggle. The official report says he walked into the woods. Privately, no one believes that. 3 people watched the full footage. The chief, an internal investigator, a tech analyst. All 3 noticed the same thing. At exactly 2:31 a.m., a shadow appears behind Jacob. Not human. Wearing a badge. With a name tag. J. Miller. The footage was locked away. The case was closed. But dispatchers still talk. Because sometimes, late at night, a patrol car radio turns on by itself, and a familiar voice says, "I'm on scene, and I'm not alone." If a body cam is never released, it's not always because of what it shows. Sometimes, it's because of what talks back. I moved into the house during late October, when the air in Pennsylvania already felt heavy and cold, like winter was watching from a distance. The house stood alone at the end of a quiet suburban street, its white paint cracked and peeling, as if the walls themselves were tired of holding secrets. The windows looked dark even during daylight, and the backyard grass was dead, flattened, and colorless, as though nothing wanted to grow there anymore. The rent was unbelievably cheap. That should have been my first warning. The landlord, an old man named Harold, barely looked at me while handing over the keys. His hands trembled slightly, and his eyes never stayed in one place for too long. Just before I signed the lease, he stopped me, leaned closer, and spoke in a low, careful voice. "You can use every part of the house," he said slowly. "But whatever you do, never open the basement door." He didn't explain further. He just walked away. The first night passed in uneasy silence. No traffic noise, no distant sirens, not even wind brushing against the windows. The house felt unnaturally still, like it was holding its breath. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint ticking of the wall clock, counting every second as if time itself had slowed down. At exactly 2:47 a.m., the silence broke. From somewhere beneath the floor, a slow dragging sound echoed upward, like fingernails scraping across old wooden planks. The sound moved carefully, deliberately, stopping and starting again, as if whatever was down there was testing whether I was listening. Then came the voice. Soft, weak, trembling. It sounded like a child. "Can you help me, please?" My body went cold. I sat upright in bed, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I told myself it had to be pipes, or maybe my imagination, but deep down I knew pipes don't whisper, and they certainly don't sound afraid. The next morning, I confronted Harold. His face went pale the moment I mentioned the voice. He didn't ask questions. He didn't deny it. Instead, he slowly sat down, as if the weight of the house had finally caught up with him. 30 years ago, he said after a long pause, my daughter went missing in that basement. He explained that she had been playing downstairs when she suddenly vanished. No screams, no struggle, just gone. The police searched for weeks but found nothing. No blood, no body, no signs of forced entry. But after that, Harold whispered, we started hearing her voice. Not just crying, calling names, begging to be let out. That thing down there, he said, eyes filled with fear, is not my daughter anymore. From that night onward, the house followed a pattern. Every single night at exactly 3 a.m., the basement door handle would begin to shake slowly, not violently, but patiently, as if whatever was on the other side knew it had time. The knocking always came next, 3 slow knocks, evenly spaced, calm and confident. Then the voice returned, but it was no longer just a child's voice. It sounded wrong, distorted, layered, as if multiple mouths were speaking at once. Please, it's cold down here. I tried recording it on my phone, but every morning the files were corrupted, reduced to static. Except once. One recording survived, and when I played it back, the voice whispered something that made my blood freeze. It whispered my name. An elderly neighbor stopped me one evening. Her face drained of color when I told her where I lived. She told me the house had a history. Children who vanished, foster kids who ran away, people who were never found. They hear someone calling them, she said quietly. Someone who sounds familiar. That night, the voice changed again. It sounded exactly like me. Open the door, it said calmly. The door opened, I saw bones. Small ones. Dozens of them. The voice screamed, no longer pretending. He locked me here. The walls bled. Hands reached from the floor. I ran. The house burned down days later. The landlord vanished. But even now, at 3 a.m., my phone rings. Unknown number. A child whispers, you promised to help me. Some basements aren't built to store things. They're built to hide what should never be found. Late October in Pennsylvania carries a strange kind of cold. The type that doesn't just touch your skin, but slowly sinks into your thoughts. Emily Carter stared out of the car window as the neighborhood appeared. Quiet, lifeless, almost too perfect. Identical houses stood in neat rows, their white paint untouched, their lawns trimmed with unnatural precision. Not a single child played outside. Not a single porch light was on. At the end of the street stood house number 317. Emily felt her chest tighten the moment she saw it. The house looked normal. 2 floors. White exterior. Black roof. But every single window faced the street, as if the house was designed to observe, not to be lived in. Her husband, Daniel, smiled. This is it. Cheap rent. Fresh start. Emily didn't answer. She felt it already. The house was watching them arrive. Inside the house, sunlight struggled to enter despite the number of windows. Every room had at least 3 large windows, all positioned at unnatural angles. Emily walked into the living room and slowly turned in a circle. No matter where she stood, she felt exposed. Daniel laughed it off. More windows means more light, right? But Emily noticed something strange. When she stood near one window, the reflection showed another angle of the room, an angle that physically shouldn't exist. She wiped the glass. The reflection corrected itself. For now. At exactly 2:17 a.m., Emily woke up. Not from a sound, not from a dream, from the feeling of being observed. She slowly turned her head toward the bedroom window. The curtains were open. She was sure she had closed them. The glass reflected the room, but something was wrong. In the reflection, Emily was still asleep, but she was awake. She blinked. The reflection blinked late. The next morning, Emily met their neighbor, Mrs. Holloway, an elderly woman with pale eyes and trembling hands. Mrs. Holloway stared at house 317, not Emily. "That house doesn't like being ignored," she whispered. Emily forced a laugh. "What do you mean?" Mrs. Holloway leaned closer. "It sees better at night." Before Emily could ask more, the woman walked away. Emily turned back. Every window of the house reflected the sky, but none reflected her. Daniel installed security cameras to calm Emily's nerves. That night, they reviewed the footage. At 3 a.m., every camera glitched simultaneously. For 3 seconds, when the feed returned, the cameras were no longer facing outward. They were facing inside the house. Specifically, the bedroom. In the basement, Emily discovered old architectural blueprints. The house layout didn't match reality. Extra rooms, extra hallways, extra windows, inside walls. At the center of the blueprint was a note written repeatedly. "The house needs to see." Suddenly, Emily heard footsteps upstairs. Slow, measured. Daniel wasn't home. That night, the windows began to change. They widened, stretched, curved. The glass pulsed like living flesh. Reflections showed scenes from different times. Families screaming, people running, faces pressed against glass from inside the walls. Emily realized the truth. The house wasn't haunted. It was alive, and it was hungry for awareness. The next morning, the house stood silent again. Perfect. Normal. A "for rent" sign appeared on the lawn. Across the street, a young couple parked their car. Emily watched from an upstairs window. She smiled. The house finally had someone watching for it. Some houses don't need ghosts. They only need eyes.